New York City never truly slept. It only paused, holding its breath between sirens and footsteps, between the rumble of subway trains and the whisper of snow on sidewalks. On one such cold evening, under the amber glow of streetlights near Central Park, two lives that had never been meant to touch crossed paths and changed forever. Lena was invisible to most people. She sat near a subway entrance on Fifth Avenue, wrapped in a thin, torn coat that had once been brown but was now the color of dust and exhaustion. Her dress was ripped at the hem, her shoes mismatched, soles worn thin by miles of walking with nowhere to go. Her face was smudged with dirt, her hair tangled and dull. Yet beneath the grime, there was something striking eyes the color of deep rain, alert and gentle. Still holding a quiet dignity the streets had failed to steal. Lena was 22, though hardship had added years to her posture and taken youth from her smile. She survived on small kindnesses, a cup of coffee left beside her, a half sandwich wrapped carefully in napkins, the rare smile from a stranger who didn't look away. Most days, she sang softly to herself to keep warm, humming melodies her mother used to sing back when life had walls and doors and a table for dinner. New York was loud, but for Lena, loneliness was louder. She felt like a ghost haunting the edges of a world that was moving too fast to notice her. Every day was a fight for a small piece of warmth, a safe corner to rest, a reason to see the next sunrise. That same evening, Alexander Wright stepped out of a black luxury car and adjusted the cuff of his tailored coat. He was tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in charcoal gray, his shoes polished enough to mirror the city lights. At 28, Alexander was one of the youngest CEOs in Manhattan, a self-made success whose face appeared on business magazines and financial news. His hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp, his expression controlled, handsome in the way wealth often refined men into something untouchable. He projected an aura of power and confidence, a man who commanded boardrooms and shaped skylines. He had just left a charity gala at a glass tower overlooking the city, where crystal chandeliers sparkled above polite laughter and carefully chosen words. The event was meant to raise awareness for urban poverty, and he had donated generously, shaken hands, and smiled for the cameras. But as Alexander walked away, the speeches felt hollow, the applause distant. He had given money, but he hadn't given a piece of himself. Something inside him felt unfinished, a quiet emptiness that no amount of success could fill. As he walked toward the park, his phone buzzed with messages he ignored. He wanted a moment of quiet, a brief escape from the constant demands of his life. And then he heard it, a soft humming, fragile but steady, weaving through the city's noise like a thread of warmth. It was a simple, beautiful melody that cut through the chaos and spoke directly to the hollow space in his chest. He stopped. Lena sat curled near the subway steps, her eyes closed as she hummed, lost in a memory of a gentler time. For a moment, Alexander simply watched. He had passed countless homeless people before, always with a flicker of sympathy, sometimes with a pang of guilt, but never with this strange, insistent pull. There was nothing loud about her, nothing demanding, just a quiet presence, like a forgotten song in a city full of noise. When Lena opened her eyes, she saw him standing there, clean, confident, and glowing with wealth. Instinctively, she looked away, her heart sinking. Rich men didn't stop for girls like her. They hurried past, or maybe tossed a bill without meeting her gaze, another transaction in a day full of them. But Alexander didn't move. He just stood there, listening. "Your voice," he said gently, his tone surprisingly soft. "It's beautiful." Lena stiffened, embarrassment flooding her cheeks. She was used to being ignored, not noticed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to disturb anyone." "You didn't," he replied, taking a small step closer. "You reminded me to listen." He reached into his coat pocket, and Lena braced herself for the crumpled bill. The gesture of charity that always felt like a wall between two worlds. But instead of pulling out cash, he paused, his gaze meeting hers with genuine curiosity. "What's your name?" She hesitated. A name was personal. It was something that belonged to her when she had nothing else. To give it away felt like a risk. "Lena," she finally said. "I'm Alex," he said, and then he did something that truly surprised her. He knelt slightly, lowering himself so he wasn't towering over her, bridging the gap between his world and hers. The cold, dirty pavement didn't seem to bother his expensive suit at all. "Are you hungry?" he asked. That night, Alexander took Lena to a small diner a few blocks away. It wasn't a luxury restaurant with white tablecloths, just a warm place with cracked vinyl booths and the comforting smell of coffee and grilled cheese. Lena tried to refuse, her pride flaring up, but her stomach betrayed her with a quiet, insistent growl. Alex just smiled, not a mocking smile, but a kind one, full of understanding. She ate slowly, carefully, as if the food might disappear if she trusted it too much. Each bite was a small miracle. Alexander watched her, noticing the way she thanked the waitress twice, how she folded her torn sleeves inward to hide the fraying edges. He listened as she began to speak, her voice gaining strength with the warmth of the food and the safety of the moment. She told him about losing her parents young, about a foster system that failed her, about dreams of studying art that faded when survival became her only focus. There was no bitterness in her voice, only a tired, profound honesty. In return, he found himself opening up in a way he never had before. He spoke of boardrooms and the crushing weight of expectations, of a success built on long nights and even longer loneliness. He admitted that despite everything he owned, the cars, the penthouse, the company, he had never felt as seen as he did in that small diner, across from a girl who had nothing but her own truth to offer. Days turned into weeks. Alexander began visiting Lena every evening. It became the most important meeting of his day. He brought her food, warm clothes, and books. He listened to her stories and shared his own. The rich man in designer coats walking beside the girl who was once wrapped in rags. Gossip spread like wildfire through his social circles. Tabloid headlines whispered of a scandal, a publicity stunt, a rich man's fleeting charity case. But Alexander didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was doing something that felt real, something that wasn't for profit or prestige. For the first time, love felt real, unpolished, unbought, and utterly transformative. One night, they stood on the Brooklyn Bridge, with the city skyline glowing like a galaxy of promises before them. The air was cold, but their hands were warm, clasped together. "You know," Alexander said, his voice full of emotion, "you never once asked me for anything, you just existed, and somehow, that saved me." Lena turned to him, her eyes shining brighter than all the city lights combined. A soft smile touched her lips. "You didn't save me, Alex," she replied softly. "You just reminded me I was worth saving." In a city of millions of stories, theirs was a small one, a quiet melody against a backdrop of noise, but it was real. And sometimes, a real connection, a single moment of seeing another person for who they truly are, is enough to change everything. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.